Welcome to lecture number 2 of Python for Researchers. This is lecture number 2 of module 1, and module 1 is Python from scratch. So in lecture number 1 we studied what are the basic syntax of Python and how to print some statement, how to comment in Python, how to use variables and how to assign values to variables, and what are the rules of naming the variables, how to take input from the user and use that input as a variable in our programming. Now, in lecture number 2, we will be deep diving into the data types. Like in previous lecture, we learned how to assign a value to a variable. Now, what kind of value that be? So let's suppose I assign x is equal to 10. So that value is called integer. Integer means a whole number that doesn't have any decimal. So like it can be positive, it can be negative, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 0, or -5, -10. These are all integers. The second type of data I can assign to variable, that is the float. Float means if there are any decimals, they may be recurring or non-recurring or fraction or anything. So they are called floats. And even if I assign 10.0, so Python will consider that as a float. Whenever you put decimal, so the input value is automatically considered as float, whether it is an integer or not. So if you add decimals, so it will be considered as float. And the third kind is a string, just like hello world. You can see the example, z is equal to hello world, that is a string, alphanumeric word. So that is the third type. And fourth type is the boolean like true or false. So it's just like a switch, on or off, or these are conditions that can be used to check some sort of flow statement. Like let's suppose if the name of the variable is x, then do this, otherwise do this. So we can use Boolean algebra in Boolean variables in that scenario. So let's have an example. Suppose if I say x is equal to 3. So I have assigned x is equal to 3. Now x is 3. I want to find out what is the type of x. So I will just write type and x. So it will show me integer. So the type of x is integer. We are using Jupyter Notebook, so that is why we don't have to use the print function here. But if you are not using Jupyter Notebook or any other IDE, if you're using any other IDE just like PyCharm or any other program, then you will have to use the print command as well. Like you will have to use this print, and then what should it print? It should print the type of x. So I will get the same result, but in the interpreter format. So this was integer, and now let's suppose I say x is equal to 2.5, and then I see the type of x, so it is a float. And if I say x is equal to asad, and then I see the type of x, now it is a string. And if I say x is equal to true, and then I see the type of x variable, then it is a boolean, right? So this is how we use the different data types in variables. Alright, after looking out that what are the data types, how can we assign that, you must have seen in the previous lecture that I was taking input from the user. And now let's suppose I want an input from the user, and I want to do mathematical operation on that. So you will see there is very important thing which we need to consider. Let's suppose if I say x is equal to input, enter a number, and whatever the number the user will input, that will be stored in x. Now what I want to add 5 into it. So I will write print x plus 5. So what do you think? Will this code run? No. I will get an error. Let's see. If I enter a number, I write 4, and then I get an error. So the error is, it is highlighting x plus 5. The error is, it is type error. You can only concatenate a string to a string. So what do we learn from here? That whatever the input you take from the user, by default that input will be considered as a string. How? Let's suppose if I say, means the Python is just considering this as this. Okay, let me execute that cell. Let's suppose I say x is equal to 4. So now the type of the variable x will be string. The reason is because x is input in the string quotations, the quotation marks. So how to solve this problem? So the solution of this problem is converting a type of data into another type of data. That is called type conversion. Like suppose if I want to take input from the user and I want to convert that string into integer. So what I will do, I will just rewrite the code. Y is equal to input, enter a number, and then I am assigning a new variable z is equal to integer of y. So what it will do, it will convert the string into integer. And now I will write print z plus 3. So whatever the input is, 3 will be added to it. Now if I write 5, so output is 8. So what do we learn? We learned that whenever you are concatenating some numbers, like if you are adding 3 is an integer, and if z was not converted into integer, then that would be string. So you cannot concatenate a string and integer. So the type of the data must be same. Like you can add integer and integer, you can add float and float, you can add a string and a string. But if you want to add some add means concatenate. If you want to concatenate variables, the values, then they must have the same type. And there are two kinds of conversions. One is the implicit conversion. Implicit conversion means, like in this program, we need to tell Python that whatever the input is, you have to convert that into integer. But there are some implicit conversion, like the Python will automatically convert that. How? Let's suppose if I write, let's suppose if I write x is equal to 4 and y is equal to 2.5. So you can see x is an integer and y is a float. Now if I add them, like z is equal to x plus y, so the Python will automatically convert 4 means the integer into float, and then it will add them. Let's see how. I will just see print type of x, print type of y, print type of z. So you can see the type of x is integer, the type of y is float, and when we add them, so the Python automatically converted integer into float and then added them. So this is called implicit conversion. Means we don't need to tell Python that you have to convert that and then you have to add them. And that the second thing that we did here, that was using the integer command, that was the explicit conversion. Means you have to tell Python that you have to convert that into another type. So what kind of other concatenations we can do is, like if you want to add some strings, like I can say x is equal to a and y is equal to b, and now if I write x plus y, so this will be just ab, because concatenation doesn't mean adding, concatenation means just joining them. And even if I write x is equal to 3 and y is equal to 6, so these are string variables. So now if I write x plus y, so it will show me 3, 6, because it is just joining the strings, not adding them, right? Okay, and then what else we can do is, let's suppose we want to explicitly convert some float into integer. So what will happen? Like let's suppose if I say x is equal to 5.7 and then y is equal to integer of x. So x will have a value of print y, and now y has a value of 5. Means when you convert, I can write in comment as well, we have learned how to write. When you convert, in the language of Python we say that is casting. When you cast a float into integer, the decimal is lost, right? So that decimal is lost, it doesn't mean it will round off, it will just ignore the decimal. Even if it is 5.9999, so 0.999 will be ignored and only 5 will be returned. So you must be careful about that. Okay, so this was how we convert float into integers, and we can also convert integer into float and as well. Like, let's have an example of converting integer into float. So if I say a is equal to 4 and b is equal to float a, so now if I print b, so b is 4.0, so if it has added 0.0 to make it a float. And in addition to that, there are some explicit integer conversions that Python is very smart in doing that. Like, let's suppose if I say x is equal to 45, so this is a string, you can see type of x, that is a string. Now if I convert this into integer and I write x, and now if I print x, so that is 45, and the type of x will be that is still a string, integer. So I am just assigning this to y, and now I am printing y, because since I was printing x, so x is still the string. So type of y is integer and the value of y is 45. But if I directly convert some string into float, like if I say 4.5 and then I say p is equal to float of t, and now if I print p and type of p, so you can see it has converted 4.5 into float. In addition, Python will not do this. Like if I say u is equal to 2, and if I say in x is equal to integer of u, so now I will get an error, print x. So value error, because obviously Python will not convert this TWO into 2. So you must be careful about that. So this was all about how do we do the concatenation, how do we see the data types and all that thing. So that's it for today. See you in next